Now, it seems Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane will have to pull out all the stops to ensure growth and a better future for the province. Just yesterday, he delivered his State of the Province address, highlighting the strides made to economic transformation and the unemployment crisis. But did the Premier go far enough? That's the question. So let's get the views of ActionSA's Eastern Cape Chairperson Athol Trollip, who joins me now for this conversation. Athol, thank you so much for your time and good afternoon to you. Was it a bold State of the Province address in your perspective?
Look, I thought it was a reasonably well encapsulating address. It's clear that the Premier understands what the challenges are in the province, and he articulated many of those. The real challenge is, what is the ANC going to do about it? Because these challenges didn't arise yesterday. They've been around for a long time. Let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, he spoke about the Mabuyane tavern disaster, where 21 young kids were killed in the tavern due to unknown causes. And it's been more than a year now. No one knows what happened to those children, least of all the parents. He also said that they're going to open up a forensic and DNA lab in the Eastern Cape that's going to be operational very shortly. That will be great news for people in this province when it does happen, because so many cases are just not finalized, or prosecutions are lost because of lack of DNA, lack of proper forensic testing. But the worst thing about the Mabuyane tavern was that the Premier said, we hope we never see such an incident again. And it wasn't long ago, 3 or 4 months ago, when the same thing happened in Mabuyane in the Eastern Cape. So access to alcohol for teenagers in this province is a big problem. And then, you know, Oscar Mabuyane said that they had created 140,000 jobs. Now, I want to say that that's nowhere near enough. We need to create 1 million+ jobs in this province. And the worst thing about what he said was that he claimed credit for creating those jobs when it was actually the private sector. And the ANC has a really schizophrenic relationship with business, because when business creates your jobs, they claim credit. But then, on the other hand, the president says business must stop complaining and get on board.
So with that being said, I mean, it seems to be a trend, even with the State of the Nation address, perhaps a lot of challenges being identified, a lot of promises being made to not only South Africans, but, you know, residents of the Eastern Cape in this context. Was there a clear direction of the how? How do we get to this promised land that government seems to continuously promise South Africans?
I think there's absolutely no clear direction, because there was no talk about policy shifts, because it's the ANC policy direction and decision-making that is so poor that results in 50% unemployment in this province amongst adults looking for jobs and 70% youth unemployment. But there were a couple of things that I will follow up that I can't vouch for, but he told us that, you know, they were going to reinvigorate the industrial parks at Butterworth, Fort Jackson, Dimbaza, Vulindlela, Komani, and that's really interesting, because we can create jobs if they do that. I was concerned, though, because he told the mayor's president that they would have to babysit these projects, and it's very clear that no mayors in the Eastern Cape can babysit such projects. And then once again, the perennial problems in agriculture with Magwa and Majola. The Premier said that they're on the road to self-sustainability. Now, I've heard that for the last 25 years, and hundreds of millions of rands have been spent there. But I have made a commitment that I will go and see those industrial parks and Magwa and Majola over the next 2 weeks to see for myself whether the Premier is actually telling the truth or not. But the fact is, in the Eastern Cape, that unemployment in the rural hinterland is our greatest problem. And the Premier himself said we have let the people down of the Eastern Cape. Now, that is the greatest admission of failure. And we believe that the Eastern Cape has enormous agricultural potential, but it's not being utilized fully. And until such time as there are proper extension services and agricultural colleges and management support for, you know, emerging farmers, we're never going to meet the potential of this province.
Yeah, so Athol, just speaking on the, the issue around unemployment, the Premier made mention, well, more of a promise that more jobs are coming. I mean, he mentioned a couple of businesses or companies here, Shoprite being one of them, Cheza Pictures, Transnet Port of Gqoga being one of them, saying that a total of 46 billion rand from 11 investors at the Provincial Investment Conference seem to have made this pledge. Now, has the province positioned itself as a as an effective government partner for these businesses? Are more jobs really coming? Because, I mean, with the unemployment rate in the country, it's a bold promise to make. You wouldn't want to promise that the economy is growing and jobs are coming and people wait and nothing actually is looming.
Well, you know, it is a very brave promise, and I don't want to be a doomsayer. I don't say that we aren't going to create jobs. God knows we need the jobs in the Eastern Cape more than anywhere else in South Africa. So I sincerely hope that that 46 billion rand of investment will materialize, because it will most certainly create jobs. But, you know, we heard on Friday that South Africa has now been grey listed. And tourism is one of our greatest potential areas of economic growth in this province. The Premier himself said that flights into and out of the Eastern Cape are a grave problem. The roads in this province are really bad. Most of them in the hinterland are untrafficable without 4x4 vehicles, and tourists don't have those kind of vehicles. And crime is a big issue. You know, Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City have got two of the metros with the highest crime rates. And these things all militate against attracting tourists into our province. I'll give you a classic example. Grahamstown, former Grahamstown is now called Makanda, probably has the greatest potential for historical tourism. It is an incredible town steeped in history, some excellent educational institutions, the High Court. It's also the scene where most of the battles of the frontier wars were fought over 100 years in this province. Yet we can't attract any kind of historical tourism, as opposed to Kalenzo and the battlefields in KwaZulu-Natal, where people come in their droves to see those things. So it's a great sadness. And once again, it's simply the ANC that promises heaven on earth but can't deliver, because they have a policy quagmire that is such a mess that doesn't generate any kind of confidence from any investors, both national or international, to come into this province. And all we need is a turnaround where people believe that there is an initiative by government to work with everybody to fix this country. And we're not seeing it with the ANC. And ActionSA believes that we're the party that can attract people to stand together and fix South Africa.
Now, speaking of that initiative, and I'm glad you mentioned the grey listing and tourism, because that is definitely, a setback just for South Africa's economy. I know that we share that with Nigeria, but in a more South African context, I mean, speaking to a lot of farmers post the budget speech by the finance minister, they didn't see a lot of reprieve or relief in terms of some sort of, diesel relief, because farmers are saying they're burning a lot of diesel just to keep, farm and production going, keep people in their jobs. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, because I know the Premier mentioned agriculture and the Eastern Cape being the biggest citrus producer after Limpopo. Any relief whatsoever for farmers that can look forward to within the province?
Well, unfortunately, Enoch Godongwana did say that there would be relief for people in the food manufacturing industry that are burning diesel, and that will help keep food price inflation down. But our greatest challenges in this province, I mean, we're an agricultural province primarily. We're the biggest producer of meat, milk, fiber, and arguably the biggest in citrus. But let's say we're the second biggest. So we're a real player in the agricultural field. Our biggest challenges are, because they're primary products, they need to be transported to processing hubs or export terminals like ports, and these products get damaged en route. And then, of course, there's the productivity of our ports, which is a real problem. There was a recent World Bank survey that surveyed 151 ports in the world, and Durban was 151, Mocha 150, and Cape Town 149, being the least productive ports in the world. So the turnaround time of loading primary products, etc., is a real problem, because it affects the shelf life of those products going abroad. And also it determines whether we can be competitive in the just on-time procurement practices of international primary products. So, these products they're perishable. They don't last forever. And if it takes a long time to transport them by rail, takes them longer time to load them onto ships, they are compromised by the time they reach the shelves in Europe and elsewhere in the world.
No, we'll leave it there, and I appreciate you adding your voice to this conversation, Athol. This is where we leave it for. Just briefly, please. Briefly, yes, briefly. Yeah,
one thing. One thing about agriculture, if you're irrigating and you're losing 10 to 12 hours of a day of irrigating, you never catch it up. So your production is going to decline, and that's been one of the greatest challenges for agriculture, with load shedding and unreliable energy supply in this province.
Well, something there to think about, as well as securing food security in the country. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. Athol, thank you for joining us right here on Today on ENCA. ActionSA's Eastern Cape Chairperson, Athol Trollip, thank you for your time.